Hello everyone, in this video session we are going to focus on chapter 4, qualitative research methods. And first of all, let's have a quick look on the outcomes of this chapter. In this chapter you will define qualitative research methods and you will explain the contributions that qualitative research methods can bring to international relations. You will also explain the properties of qualitative research design, and you will list the steps of conducting a qualitative research process, and finally you will list the criteria for rigor in qualitative research studies. First of all, let's mention a little bit from the basic features of qualitative research. Qualitative research is sensitive to natural environment. As you know, the focus is on the individual, the focus is on meaning and the cultural group and social group of the individuals. For this reason, qualitative research is sensitive to the natural environment. Secondly, we have the participatory role of the researcher. Researcher is most of the time functions as a participant of the study. He or she has his or her own perspective towards the research phenomena and towards the social culture. For this reason, researchers are also accepted as participants in qualitative research. Also, qualitative research has a holistic approach towards the data collection process, data analysis process, and interpretation. Also, the main focus is to identify the perceptions of the participants and to generate some meanings based on these perceptions. We also have a flexibility in the research design. I mean, you can change your research questions, you can revise your data collection tools throughout the research process, and also finally the analysis in qualitative data is inductive. And these unique features of qualitative research, of course, bring some advantage to international relations. For example, this in-depth analysis methodology can improve international relations capacity to explain the relativity and mobility of social phenomena. Secondly, qualitative methods in international relations can diversify the scientific perspective of international relations. A few minutes later, we will focus on each of them. We have a lot of different methods in qualitative research, and this richness can enrich the perspective of international relations. And also, qualitative research methods are adaptable to change, and this is also a big advantage for international relations. And also, the data concerning the perceptions of participants enrich the perspective of international relation. And these are the main contributions of qualitative research to international relations. And it will be okay to have a look at the qualitative research designs, and let's start with a case study. Case study is a close and in-depth examination of an event or phenomenon in its context in a given period of time. This case can be an institution, this case can be an individual or a specific group, and you analyze this case in an in-depth way in a given period of time, and this is called as the case study design. And in this case study design, the researcher collects data from various sources such as observations, interviews, visual materials, documents, and reports. And in these case studies, the case can be a single one, a single person, a single institution, or multiple cases such as some people or some institutions. And these cases should be, of course, compatible with, appropriate with the researcher's aim. In an ethnography, which is an advanced level of qualitative research design, we have some common behaviors, language, and action models of an intact culture with their natural environment during a long time span. I mean, you try to observe the individuals in their natural cultural group. And as researchers, we have a special emphasis on the cultural components of the real settings. We try to present the reflection of social life as it is experienced by the members of that group. The focus is on the culture they create in their social group. And of course, just like in the case study, the researcher again benefits from multiple forms of data collection tools such as observation, interviews, diaries, and document analysis. In narrative inquiry, which is another research design in qualitative studies, we basically focus on human experiences and stories. I mean, it's in a way sharing experiences about an event or a chain of events. And the researcher here tries to explore in narrative inquiry the participants' experiences. The participants tell about their experiences they had in the past, and the researcher try to explore these experiences. And in narrative inquiry, the field notes are very important, and the interview logs, observations, narrations, autobiography writing, class notes, and newspapers are also important data collection tools for researchers in narrative inquiry. And in phenomenology, which is again a distinct form of research design, we focus on participants' experiences about a phenomenon they define. I mean, the researchers aim to determine individuals' own perceptions and experiences through their own standpoint. I mean, the meaning individuals attach to events is at the center of the phenomenological perspective. And these events can be any human experience: happiness, accidents, relations, situations, opinion, feelings, and all of them can be a research topic for phenomenological studies. And we also have a distinction between descriptive phenomenology and interpretive phenomenology. We also have a grounded theory approach, a grounded theory design in qualitative studies, and the main focus is to find out a general theory about a process, action, or interaction grounded in participant standpoint. The researcher in grounded theory try to explore participants' social process, behavioral patterns, acceptances, and meanings. Here in grounded theory, the theories in the literature do not explain your situation. So as a researcher, you try to ground your own theory, and you collect data and you analyze them, and the concepts and categories you need, they are all grounded in the data collected. And specific to grounded theory, this research design has an emerging process in which the researcher analyzes the collected data, and the concepts derived from the analysis serve as a foundation for further data collection, process, and analysis. So we call it as an emerging process. And within the process of conducting qualitative research, again, we need to identify a research focus or a problem. How can we do it? Is there a consistency between the researcher aim and the researcher questions? We need to answer this. Are the research questions clear, correct, and to the point? We need to ask this question to ourselves as a researcher. Can the research questions be answered? I mean, is the writing, the grammar, the style of the research question correct? Can we answer it? And are the sources we have enough to answer the research questions? I mean, as a general look, you have a critical perspective to your research study at the very beginning of the process. And then you decide on your participants. As you may remember from your previous chapters, in qualitative studies, we have small number of participants, and they are usually determined through purposeful sampling strategies. For example, if you select your participant based on criterion sampling, you have some criteria in your mind, and you choose the participants that meet your criteria. For example, if you benefit from snowball sampling, you reach other individuals with the help of your first participant. You decide on a participant, you think that yes, this participant can provide me rich amount of data, and then you go other people with the advice, with the suggestion of your participants. You can also benefit from homogeneous sampling and maximum variation sampling. And after deciding on your participants, of course, you have a number of data collection techniques that are commonly used in qualitative research, such as interviews, observations, some diaries, documents, and artifacts. Okay, all of them are commonly used in qualitative data, and with the help of these data collection tools, you can collect your data from your participants. And after collecting your data, of course, it's time for analysis. And in fact, in qualitative research, the data analysis part can change based on the designs and data collection techniques. But in a very general way, in a very traditional sense, we usually have some familiar chunks in the data. We code label them. We have some paragraphs that are familiar to each other. Then we give some codes, some names to these chunks. And after that, getting those codes, we have some general themes that we put these codes under these themes, and we generate some themes and categories. It may change based on your design. For example, in narrative design, you make some thematic analysis or interactive analysis or performative analysis. Or if your research design is a grounded theory, you need to benefit from constant comparison, in which you always compare your codes to codes and your themes to themes, so that you can generate more saturated categories. And at the final step of qualitative research, after analyzing your data and creating some findings, you need to report it. And while reporting, you need to write about your theoretical background. Of course, you need to write about your methodology, which includes your research design, your participant selection, your data collection and analysis. And in the findings section, you mention about the results of your analysis. Then you discuss these findings in line with the literature in your discussion part. And in suggestions, you present some suggestion related with the topic, and you finish your report with some conclusion remarks. And in this video session, to make a summary, we focused on how to plan a qualitative research study. We talked about the research problem. We mentioned the research design in qualitative studies. We also talked about the participants and how to decide on them. We mentioned the data collection tools and data analysis process. And finally, we mentioned how to report our qualitative research study.